News alert, breaking news out of Ybor City right now. A huge fire right on the main drag. This is 7th Avenue and 22nd Street. We understand it's a furniture store and it's right near the...
Good morning, everyone. I'm Deborah Bowden.
And I'm Lloyd Towers. First on Fox, a Fox News alert, breaking news out of Ybor City right now. A huge fire right on the main drag. This is 7th Avenue and 22nd Street. We understand it's a furniture store and it's right near the historic Columbia restaurant. People there for dinner were evacuated. We have no word of any injuries or any damage to the Columbia restaurant at this time. There are dozens and dozens of firefighters on the scene. This is a multiple alarm fire. It broke out at around 8 o'clock tonight. Again, this is 7th Avenue and 22nd Street in Ybor City. A huge fire at a furniture store near the Columbia restaurant. And Deborah, we were monitoring reports earlier that firefighters' orders were not to go into this building.
Absolutely a very dangerous situation for the firefighters. We're told there are about 50 firefighters on scene here. And even though they train for this day in and day out, we know that these buildings can collapse. And for that reason, they've been told to stay outside the building. And as you can see, they're still shooting water onto it. But no one is going in at this point because they are concerned about any kind of a collapse.
Firefighters here trying to protect adjacent buildings, to protect exposures, they call it. What they'll do is they'll put a curtain of water between that burning furniture store and any adjacent building. They'll use those high-rise snorkel trucks. They'll use deck guns from fire engines to try to put up that curtain of water between the burning building and any other buildings that may catch fire. Again, the Columbia restaurant was evacuated. They say they had burning embers coming from this building at 7th Avenue and 22nd Street over toward the Columbia. That's why they evacuated the Columbia restaurant about 8 o'clock tonight.
And we're also told that traffic in the area has been rerouted. No one is allowed to drive through this area, and trains. CSX has been notified to stop any trains from coming through until they get a hold of this fire. Again, this is going on in Ybor City. We're told a furniture store on fire since about 8 o'clock this evening. And at this point, it looks like it is still very much out of control.
7th Avenue and 22nd Street, the main drag at Ybor City. We're told there are power outages in that area as transformers have blown in the area and some service has been turned off. There you see the live picture from Skyfox. You see the large amount of water running out of some of those buildings there as they continue to put thousands and thousands of gallons of water on this structure, both the burning structure and the adjacent structures, to try to keep this fire from getting out of control.
At this point, we don't know what caused this fire. Still too early to tell, but we are told that fire investigators are on scene waiting to start their investigation. But again, we don't know the cause and we don't know if anyone was inside the building at the time.
No reports of injuries at this time. We're going to continue to monitor this fire throughout this newscast. We have a Fox 13 news crew on the ground, and we'll get further reports as we go along tonight.
Also want to let you know that we do have streaming video of this fire on our website, myfoxtampabay.com, so you can monitor our Skyfox video throughout the show tonight. Much more on this to come throughout our 10 o'clock hour.
At this point, working to get these flames out. It's been burning since right around 8 o'clock tonight, and now more than 2 hours later, this thing still looks to be a pretty serious fire. We're here with Captain Bill Wade from Tampa Fire Rescue. Bill, what is this looking like now? Would you say it's under control?
At this point, it appears that the fire is mostly knocked down. Fire crews will be here for the next several hours, making sure all the flames are out. And fire investigators are on the scene, beginning to do interviews and looking into what might have caused this large fire.
And we know that this is an antique furniture store, and the building itself is right in the center of Ybor City. It's more than 100 years old. What's it look like right now? A total loss?
Well, there is an antique furniture store in one lower corner of the building. We understand the second floor was vacant. There's also a home decor store on the far end of the building that appears to be relatively undamaged, fortunately. At this point, though, it appears everything in this vintage brick building is pretty well gone.
And we understand that there was nobody inside, so luckily tonight nobody was hurt in this building.
Fortunately, nobody has been hurt this evening, and yes, we do understand the businesses were closed when the fire started. The only concern was fire spreading to the Columbia restaurant. Fire crews set up a defensive position to protect that restaurant. Customers in there were evacuated for fear the building might catch fire, but fortunately that did not happen.
Very much fortunately. Anything else we know right now, the cause of this fire? I imagine that will take some time for these fire investigators to deduce.
At this time, there are fire investigators on the scene from the Tampa Fire Marshal's office, and they are beginning their work even as the flames are being put out.
Okay, thank you very much, Captain Bill Wade from Tampa Fire Rescue Department. And we spoke earlier with some of those patrons from the Columbia restaurant. We can hear from them right now.
It kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the guy kept trying to isolate the situation, but it kept getting worse and worse until finally it blew into this.
There was just flames everywhere, and then smoke started pouring out of every orifice. And I mean, this building is very important to Tampa's history.
And I think any loss of any of these buildings is extremely important to the Tampa, not only tourism, but for our general population.
Now, again, we don't know the cause of this fire yet. We're sure to know more about that tomorrow. Tampa Fire Rescue fire investigators are here trying to figure out, Lloyd, what would make this fire start. Huge 5-alarm fire at this point. At last count, 18 fire crews, teams of people working to get these flames out.
Well, the good news, Nancy, tonight is no injuries reported, and also a lot of buildings adjacent to that furniture store saved.
Very lucky news. Nobody was hurt in the Columbia restaurant. That's one of the things you hear about when you're hearing about Tampa in general. Very, very good news that none of these buildings were hurt. But again, the furniture store, more than 100 years old, that building. That's a shame.
Yeah. Fox 13's Nancy Perla reporting live from Ybor City. Thanks, Nancy. Down on that, trying to extinguish the fire, as you can see, down through the roof of that building right now from Skyfox, a lot of the contents of that building damaged. But at some point, when firefighters arrived here, they said, look, the contents of this building are not as important as protecting the adjacent buildings, including the historic Columbia restaurant, and also, most importantly, to make sure that all the people were taken out of the Columbia, evacuated from there, to do a search around the area to make sure there's nobody else in danger, get all the people out of there, and then try to put this fire out, and that's what we're following right now.
And you can also see from the Skyfox footage here that much of the roof is gone. You can see straight down into that building. That was also a huge concern, the roof collapsing on firefighters, and so for that reason, they pulled all the firefighters out of the building early on and would not let them in for fear of a building collapse, a roof collapse there. And as you can see, it has burned through that building. We're told this is about a 100-year-old building, like many of the structures there in Ybor City, an historic building.
We've heard from Fox 13's Nancy Perla on the ground there. We're going to try to hear from her a little later on as we continue to gather details on this fire from eyewitnesses. Tampa fire investigators also on the scene to see if they can determine a cause of this fire. We'll bring you all the details as soon as they become available to us. And
now, a massive fire got underway right around 8 o'clock this evening at a furniture store, a 2-story furniture store in Ybor City, right at 7th Avenue and 22nd. The main drag there. We are told that although it's still burning, things are under control. But as you can see, this fire is it's a tough one, and they have been fighting it for several hours.
we've got you covered on all angles of this fire. It's streaming live right now on the web at myfoxtampabay.com. Also gathering a lot of angles for Good Day Tampa Bay all morning tomorrow. We have plenty of questions to answer about the cause of this fire, also what firefighters had to go through to get this thing knocked down. Fox 13's Nancy Perla is live on the ground there. Nancy, what can you tell us?
Well, Lloyd, it was a 5-alarm fire, but right now the smoke has dissipated. There's no visible flames. It looks to be very much under control. We heard just a little while ago from Tampa Fire Rescue that they were saying it was pretty well taken care of at this point. And now I have to tell you from our perspective on the ground, it is much better than when we first got here. There were flames leaping out of the roof of this building, more than 100 years old, right in the center of Ybor City. Lloyd.
And Nancy, when you arrived on the scene, were there a lot of people gathered around there? There was a crowd, I guess, that was evacuated from the Columbia restaurant, which is pretty close to that building that was on fire.
It looks to be right next to each other. There was a big crowd in the Columbia restaurant eating dinner Sunday night. They all moved across the street to a parking lot where I'm standing right now, and we spoke with some of them earlier. They were describing a fire of proportions that you never hear about. I mean, flames and smoke. It sounded like a very dramatic scene right after 8 o'clock this evening.
Well, you know, we were looking from the Sky Tower camera here at the station a little bit earlier, about 8 o'clock. We could see those fireballs coming from 7th Avenue there at Ybor City. You talked to Captain Bill Wade of Tampa Fire Rescue a little earlier, and we understand that the firefighters were actually told, no, we're not going to go inside this structure. We're going to try to protect other structures so that this fire wouldn't spread.
Exactly, and you know, there were so many firefighters here, 18 crews of firefighters, meaning that many more people. There's several people on each crew. Their safety is of utmost importance, as you know, as well. Maintaining the integrity of the buildings next to this antique furniture store, very important. So they were trying to create walls of water to protect the fire from spreading even further.
And more good news in terms of the fact that we have not heard of any injuries here. And that, of course, is important for all the folks who are down on this holiday weekend in Ybor City.
Exactly. The best news of the night.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you very much, Nancy Perla. Now we will turn to what caused this fire. Investigators already on scene trying to determine just that.
Of course, complete coverage coming up first thing in the morning starting at 5 a.m. on Good Day Tampa Bay. Hope you'll join us for that.